Spot the difference.
Who do these people think they are? Honestly, who do they think they are?
Good morning, guys. Welcome to the Opposition Show. Avi, how's it going?
G'day, mate. How you doing? Good to see you on this fine Thursday morning at 10 a.m. giving it a crack because we know that the Today Show has dropped the ball and there's a bunch of people that seem politically homeless at this time of the morning. So we thought we'll give them a home. That's what this is about, isn't it?
This is the morning show now. Which today we ended up doing 10 a.m., but we might even start earlier. So if you guys have any feedback in the comments, let us know. We were thinking of starting around 8 a.m., but maybe 10 a.m. is a good time. I know people might be at work, but you can put it on in the background. We're on multiple platforms, live streaming via multiple platforms, so you can just put it audio playing in the background and listen in, just like you're listening into the radio or the Today Show. I don't even believe that many people are actually watching the Today Show. What do you reckon, Avi?
Their ratings was certainly down, and I think Carl was making that shift already. But having said that, we're just going to go with it. This is what we're doing. This has been our inspiration. We realize there's a gap in the market and we're going to take advantage of it because we are opportunists. I hope you're all having a lovely day. As usual, this is going to be about an hour show, a bit less today just because we're running a bit late. As usual, you can get involved in the conversation by just having a comment, and your comments will scroll through here on the live stream. So unlike the Today Show, you get to be interactive with the show and other guests, and of course us as well. 100%. And if you super chat on YouTube, so if you go to our YouTube, I think it's actually the 3 YouTube pages at the moment running it, I believe. Is that right?
I believe so, yeah. Rukshan's and Avi's and also Rebel News Australia should be working as well.
Throw a super chat in any of that. Appreciate it in advance. It's what helps cover the costs here, keep the lights on. And as you can see, I got one of my lights off because we can't afford all the lights. So super chat away, and we will get to every super chat. If I have to leave, Rukshan will. I'm on a deadline, so we will get to every super chat. But if I have to leave before we do, Rukshan will certainly get to us. So if you want to talk crap about me, if you want to ask Rukshan when I'm not here to replace me with Carl, you can do all of that. You can redirect the conversation. In the meantime, I'm going to say make sure to smash that like button, smash that share button. We've got some exciting news to break this morning's show on. In fact, I'm just going to also share it here online as a story.
This is actually really interesting because I'll read the headline first. One Nation overtakes Labor Liberals in Victoria. Alan's ratings dives. Let's just into Alan, the Premier of Victoria. And I find this interesting because last couple of days we've had all types of polls come out from different polling groups. And there's been some negative coverage as well, Avi. I don't know if you've noticed, of One Nation saying, oh, they've tanked in the polls because they went down five points in one poll.
Let me tell you a little secret, Rukshan, because you probably you follow some of these grifter pages that don't actually understand politics at all. When it comes to polling, you can't measure everything on one poll. You've got to look at the sustained trajectory. Like no one's ever going to always be going up. It's impossible. Statistically, it's impossible. Otherwise, they're going to win 100% of the poll, 100% of the votes. So you're always going to have dips in it. You've got to look at where it's heading generally. So that's why they like to look at a few polls, and you've also got to look at the number of people being polled. And today's one is...
Well, let's go to today's one. I've just went at the old ones, but yeah, let's just have a look at today's one because I'll actually read the article really quickly just to give you an idea. One Nation has overtaken Labor in the coalition for the first time in Victoria, and Premier Jacinda Allen's approval rating has sunk to a historic low in a new poll that shows the government is on track to be turfed out. That's the Victorian Labor government in the state election in November. This is the latest poll by the Australian Financial Review. Shows Labor and the coalition neck and neck on a primary vote of 26% each, while One Nation's primary vote of 27%. Allen's net favourability plunged to minus 42%, making her one of the most unpopular state leaders in Australian history. I'm not surprised. No Premier has won an election with such a dire personal approval ratings, and only John Cain in Victoria and Anna Bligh in Queensland, both minus 43, has been less popular than Allen. The survey was of 5,516 Victorians, was conducted between June 17th and June 28th. So very recent. I won't read more into it, but this is just some of the data there. So definitely the Liberals in Victoria were heading the polls over the last couple of weeks, just based on the fact that Jacinta Allen's become very unpopular here in Victoria. But now to see One Nation actually edging past the Liberals as well, despite not even having a state leadership, put in place, like the leader of One Nation in Victoria hasn't necessarily been announced. It's tremendous. So there is something definitely going on in Victoria that we're seeing all around the country when it comes to One Nation's popularity. And in a state like Victoria, where they traditionally haven't really done well whatsoever over the last couple of decades, this is very new territory for One Nation. And you're seeing, just off the momentum of what we're seeing around the country, One Nation getting a boost here in Victoria as well. What's your read on this, Avi?
Yeah, so there's a few important points that you see from this article, and I think one of them is the fact that you got to look at the numbers of people being polled. So in the last poll that everybody crashed out over just, I think 2 days ago, where everyone was like, oh, there's a dip in One Nation's support, and it's the most ridiculous thing. Anyone that was taken seriously, it drives me nuts. You don't take anybody that made that argument after that poll cannot be taken seriously, because if you saw a consistent drop over a few polls, then yes. And that's why even the rise of One Nation, the media didn't get behind it until there was actually more than normal. So like when you'd see 3 in a row, 2 in a row for a major party, they will say that is they're seeing a trend, right? With One Nation, it took a lot longer for the mainstream media to get behind, because they didn't want to admit it. It got to a point where they had to admit it, because by every poll consistently over a few polls, different polls from different pollsters from different political persuasions, they were all saying that One Nation got to this place where they were the most popular political party in the country. So having said that, you've got to expect a dip in the poll at some point. You can't, like I said before, you can't keep rising. Otherwise, you're going to have 100% of the vote. It's never going to happen. So anybody that crashed out the other day about a dip in the poll is retarded. I'm sorry.
Well, what did they crash out about? I mean, if you watch the different groups, depending on their particular political agendas and political worldview,
sure,
they made different reasons. So one group was saying, the woke right was saying, oh, it's because Israel and Gina
sure,
Reinhardt. The other,
sure,
the Labour people were saying, well, it's because of the monoculture, their multiculturalism.
Yes.
And it was this kind of, everyone's just putting whatever they want onto that and saying, hey, that's the reason why. This is why it's responsible. And literally, the left is always going to do that. But you had the people on the right also freaking out, thinking that, just like you said, based on one poll, they could dictate, reasons around One Nation and what they should do to correct that. When we're seeing the trend overall, like you said, over the last couple of months, keep trending towards One Nation.
So the position you need to take in that time is watch and wait. Wait till you see some sort of trend, because one poll doesn't matter. And then to go and try explain it away to suit your agenda, that's opportunistic. But so there's different people, yeah. But I think that most of the people making their little videos about what angle it was, the reason, the justification for the dip, I think that they did believe it meant something, and they all wanted to use it. They were opportunistic to explain why this dip was happening to suit their agenda, whether it was Israel, whether it was Gina Reinhardt, whether it was the monoculture, whatever stupid group. But I think generally most of them believed it meant something substantial, because any serious person just sat back and said, let's wait and see what actually happens, for the reasons I mentioned before. The reason why this poll is important is, one, it shows that last poll doesn't mean so much about a trend. There's no big drop. In fact, when you read into the numbers of this poll, it's actually far more substantial than some of the other polls. You're talking about 5,500 people polled on this one, as opposed to many of those other polls where you're talking about 1,000 to 1,600. So this one is a major poll. And then when you dig deeper into this article, which is breaking down the numbers, it's talking about the how half of those surveyed said that they were solid in their vote. And when it came to One Nation voters, specifically 62% were solid in their vote. So you got to understand that this trend is real. And in Victoria, there is a monumental shift happening. The socialist state of Victoria is turning. Now, based on these numbers, really, Labor has no chance in the next election. However, don't get complacent, because this means that a lot of people that traditionally vote Labor are moving over also to One Nation. So the question is, in the election that's coming up, I do believe that obviously One Nation and the Liberal Party are going to do a proper deal.
Preference deal, yeah.
Preference deal. And so that should at least bring potentially a One Nation premier in Victoria.
I mean,
but probably more likely, I imagine, but who knows, probably more likely at this point, based on this, a Liberal premier with a strong balance of power by One Nation.
I'll take a One Nation deputy premier as well. Sure. I mean, like it was trending towards the Liberals, obviously, the last few months. But like you said, the working class vote, I believe, even traditional Labor voters are moving towards One Nation. Especially, I would say, if we're considering ethnic people, for instance, white Australians are moving towards One Nation, especially the working class. They feel disenfranchised by Labor. And Labor is actually, their power base still remains the ethnic enclaves here in Victoria, plus all of their socialists and communists and Marxists and leftists and, the preference flows they get from the Greens and the Victorian Socialists and so on. So I do believe, like you said, right now, because the Victorian state election is so close, we're not waiting for 2 years like the federal election.
Exactly.
There's less time for things to go wrong with these trajectories that are showing One Nation doing well. So if they can get their act together more in Victoria and have a leadership team, have a bit more of a presence in Victoria, I do think they can build enough momentum there to challenge, obviously, Labor, but also be a headache for the Liberals in a way that would make the Liberals do the correct thing. Jess Wilson, it's time to step up and not be stupid and actually work out a deal with One Nation and do something. They're going to have to do a preference deal beforehand for sure. I think even a more of a solid commitment to work together, if they needed to form a government between both of those parties, would put more confidence in the Victorian people going into an election. But a preference deal is enough if they get the numbers and they can sort that out afterwards. Because, they will have to one way or the other or hand back power to Labor or some other weird coalition that Labor ends up coming up with. Because I can foresee a future, Avi, where Labor would maybe be willing to make some concessions to One Nation because they're so obsessed with power to remain in power in some sort of minority government with Labor. I know it sounds crazy, but Labor has been in power for so long in Victoria that they are obsessed, and there are so many rattlesnakes and so many cobwebs in their cupboard that they want to keep disclosed, that they are terrified of losing the upcoming election because it's going to be open season. Royal commissions on their big build projects, all the CFMU corruption that we're seeing coming out, all the crime, all the nonsense that's gone on over all these decades, especially the Daniel Andrews years leading into Jacinta Allen. All of that, I hope, they're talking a big game now, the Liberals. I hope they go through with making all of that a part of some sort of investigation, Royal Commission, whatever it is, because we have been wanting answers to a lot of these questions in the state of Victoria for a long time. And the Labor government has been one of the least transparent governments in the history of the country, probably here in Victoria.
They didn't need to be. They didn't need to be, and they dominated in every single election. You remember after the mishandling of COVID, the way in which Daniel Andrews still dominated the next election. In fact, I lost hope then. I thought Victoria was a basket case. It looks like today we might be on a pivotal turning point here in Victoria, which is exciting. And I guess my final message on this is Don't let the naysayers bring you down every time there's a little dip in something. There is a shift happening across the country, and we're lucky enough to have the November election here in Victoria. That will once again prove. And if the outcome, if what we're seeing here ends up happening, which I think there's no reason it won't. In fact, I think that the margins might grow between them, because all the issues that are making people turn on the Labor government here are only getting worse. You know, when you talk about the youth migrant crime, when you talk about things like the corruption on the CFMEU, the big build, all these things, there's no way she's clearing her name before the election. So I feel like the trajectory in general is heading in one direction, even if we do see a dip here and there. But remember, these dates as well are up until a couple of days ago. So it includes Gina Reinhart, after Gina Reinhart's comments that were completely taken out of context and blew up, and everyone that wanted to have a dig at One Nation from any side jumped on it. It includes the monoculture. It includes all of that. And right now, she is the most popular. They are the most popular party here in Victoria. And
with the least infrastructure and not a clear leader set in place. So it's amazing what they've managed to achieve. And my last point on this is that the Liberals also are struggling here in Victoria, even though they shouldn't be. They've always got internal party dramas. Recently, we have seen Maura Deeming and Matthew Guy, and then Jess Wilson, and all the drama related to that. So Liberals definitely need to clean up their act as well, and show people in Victoria that they're ready to lead if they are.
Well, they've also been made redundant. They've been made redundant out of their own doing, because that for so many years they were in a race to the bottom again with Labor. A race to who can be more liberal and
woke,
a race to the bottom of the wokeness, and then storms in One Nation saying finally what everyone wants to hear right at the right time. And so now the Liberal Party here is going to have to decide, are we trying to beat the Labor Party at being woke, or are we going to try retake our conservative position on the political spectrum? And I still don't think that I still don't think they have a clear vision, because they're stuck between those two things. They're fighting with Labor on one hand about who's more progressive, and then they're fighting with One Nation at the same time to say who's a real representative of the Conservatives in Victoria.
Yeah, One Nation. Sorry to cut you off, Harvey, but One Nation has been an existential threat to the Liberal Party, not just in Victoria, but around the country, and especially federally. So we've even seen articles like this coming out from The Guardian, but these things have been discussed. So the Liberal front bench calls for party to rebrand after a drop in the polls, prompting ridicule from Labor. So the Liberals are so desperate that some in their ranks are even considering renaming the party. That's how much the Liberal brand has been damaged across the country. And, we do have a few people. I don't know if you've seen, what's his name? Hastie. He's come out really strong. Is it Andrew Hastie? What's his name?
Andrew Hastie, yeah. He's come up against One Nation. I think that whole feud started with... the Ben Roberts-Smith. Hastie's been a big campaigner against Ben Roberts-Smith. I don't know why he thinks that's some sort of winning ticket. I don't know if there's personal stuff there. I think he's doubling down on his position.
What do you think of his whole demeanor? Because he's saying that he's going to go down fighting. So he's taken the opposite stance, and he's gone in really hard, which is admirable in some respects.
Yeah. It's very admirable. The fact is that I can tell you one half of that statement is going to end up being true, the going down part, because he's got zero chance. You ask the average Aussie, do you have more faith in Andrew Hastie or Pauline Hanson? And I guarantee you, I don't even need a poll to tell you that. And we're not even talking about One Nation supporters. I bet you if you put that to Labor supporters, they will say at least she's more honest and she's remained consistent over a longer period of time. I feel like the political game that people like Hastie are playing is, how do we differentiate ourselves from One Nation?
Well, I mean, they don't have a choice to that. I mean, that's the thing, right? Because this is the thing. This is what I think. The same reason that Matt Canavan, when he became the leader of the Nationals, went after One Nation, is because if these other parties, the Liberals and the Nationals, don't provide Australians with a vision of who they are and a strong vision of what their brand means, and they just kowtail to One Nation and just take on everything that One Nation is doing and saying, isn't it just conceding that One Nation is the party that should be forming government? Like, what is the strength of the Liberals? Like, why vote for Liberals if they are not willing to also differentiate themselves from One Nation? So in that respect, I understand the tactical side of it, because they are going to get swallowed up by One Nation if they go down this trajectory of saying, actually, we're going to concede to One Nation, we're going to just jump in line with them. And they're literally saying, we're not the party of government, we can't form government in the future, we think One Nation is better. So isn't it right from that respect?
The Liberal Party is screwed either way. And that's because of their own, that's their own doing. It's because of the reason that for so many years they have been fighting with Labor to become Labor light, that then One Nation walked in and goes, no, this is actually the conservative position here. This is what real right-wing positions should be, and put them forth. And then it ended up being like them running against the Uni Party. And now the Liberal Party are stuck between a rock and a hard place, because yes, like you said, if they end up going back and capitulating to the One Nation positions, One Nation will just turn around and go, why would you believe them when now they're suddenly copying our positions, which is a bit like what they did with Labor. Like when they were running in the previous elections and taking Labor-like positions, I was saying to people, why would anyone vote for the Liberal Party when their whole strategy is to say, oh, they're net zero by 2030. We're saying we'll do net zero by 2040. Like, if somebody wants Labor, why would they vote for a shittier version of Labor? And now when they do the same thing, trying to redirect the other direction, they're going to fail as well, because all One Nation has to say is, we're the ones that have been consistently campaigning for this, not when it was politically popular or trendy to do it. We've done it based on our beliefs. So who do you believe is actually going to do what they say they're going to do? The party that has been fighting with Labor to the bottom, or the party that has been consistent? So yes, the Liberal Party is pretty much screwed. Their only chance, in my opinion, to survive anything over these next few years is to make a proper deal with the Conservative Party, with One Nation, and then for them to hope that in time, while they still retain any sort of relevancy because of any deals that they make, because those deals are what's going to keep any sort of seats for the Liberal and National Party, to be honest. Like, they're going to get wiped otherwise. They're going to need One Nation preferences to even survive. And then for them, it is to weather the storm, to see what happens to One Nation after they're given a chance. Because who knows, like, One Nation, after winning in Victoria, after, whatever happens in the next federal election, but maybe after that, Australians will turn around and go, okay, that was fun. We've sent a message to the two major parties, and maybe it just doesn't, it doesn't end up living up to people's expectations, and they want one of those major parties in. But if the Liberal Party completely wipes themselves and are just not there, then it's never going to happen. It's always going to end up being, the two parties will end up being One Nation versus the Labor Party. So I think for their survival, they have to make a deal. I'm personally hoping, one thing that I hate in this space, whether it's politics or media, is frauds, people that are inconsistent, people that say things just because it's trendy right now instead of what they believe. And so to me, I hope and pray, I can see that One Nation, this is something I've been campaigning for about 10 years. I've been supporting publicly One Nation for 10 years, long before it was cool. And I've always wanted them to win. Now I want them to win and govern and then succeed. Because this is what I want. I want people who actually stand for what they believe in and never capitulate to any side. besides for their belief, that's the only thing that drives them. Then that's who I want to see win in every space, like in any space within politics, whether it's media, whether it's whether it's in government. So I'm hopeful. I think finally there is a direction that I'm excited about in Australia, and if I wouldn't want to be in the Liberal Party today. Absolutely not, because you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. I think we don't have that much time left, so let's maybe move on to the next story.
Which is
Was there any super chats on that
there was no
subject?
super chats, guys, but if you do want to contribute, guys, you can, and support the show, you can do super chats. So you can scan that QR code there, and that will take you to a page where you can support the show as well. It's a very new time slot for us, early mornings. The morning show is starting. So we started at 10. We might start earlier, like I said. But based on that morning show thing that I'm talking about now, it's a good segue into this next story, which is around Karl Stefanovic. Again, making headlines. I think Karl's going to keep making headlines. He's become like the tabloid go-to for the mainstream media and press as well. They find his antics or his stories, whatever he's involved in, they find it really interesting. Now, the latest is he's also been dumped from another radio show, this time from ARN that he was doing with Eddie Maguire, which is going to happen with these big name studios. They're going to obviously toe the line, and they don't want to court any controversy themselves. But that's not really the story that I wanted to talk about, Avi. It's the fact that Karl might be teaming up, based on rumor, with his friend here, Kyle Sandlines. So, and they've registered a domain, The Morning Men, or something else called Karl and Kyle, or Kyle and Karl. And if it does actually end up happening, I think it will be earth-shattering for the mainstream media, because here you have two of the biggest names, one from radio and one from television, potentially joining forces and starting some new venture. And that is going to, as much as I love the legacy media, sarcasm, it is going to make minds explode for these executives all around the country if they do a certain time slot that targets their major time slots as well. Does that make sense what I'm trying to say? Like, it's going to cause them headaches, because a lot of Australians, especially in the first weeks or months, are going to tune in to hear from Kyle and Karl, whatever they're saying. I think it's going to be disastrous for the media. What do you think?
Listen, we've seen this play out already before. We've seen it's interesting because it just happened to be that Piers Morgan and Karl, the first interview happened to be Piers Morgan.
Yeah.
And if you watch that one, as much as I'm no fan of Piers Morgan. I don't think, to be fair, I can't stand the guy, and for some of the reasons that I actually mentioned before, I think Piers Morgan. The reason why I don't like him is because he's inconsistent. He doesn't actually believe in anything. The thing you can see about Piers Morgan is, if you don't like his opinion today, wait 24 hours, and he'll probably when the wind changes, he will shift with it. So his success is nothing I'm ever excited about. However, there are similarities in the story here, because they're both from Breakfast TV.
Both got sacked.
And Piers has been sacked from a number of them. and to be fair, I think Piers has been sacked for legitimate reasons, like, some of the stuff that he did at the Daily Mirror and all that stuff, some of the things that he did, not against Meghan Markle, which is why he got sacked from the morning breakfast show. That was ridiculous. He was right about that. But the good thing about Piers is he's right maybe half the time, because he flips his position so much, like some of these people we know here in Australia as well. He flips so often that he'll be right half the time. That's the positive way of looking at it. But he was giving Karl advice on it, and the thing that we can learn from somebody like Piers is what happens in today's current environment when you cancel somebody like that, especially for an interview. For something as simple as an interview when you're meant to be a journalist, and whether you like the way he conducted the interview or not shouldn't matter. You know what? There are so many interviews on the ABC that are conducted in the same fashion with far left-wing extremists, with pro-Hamas terrorists. Like the fact that the idea that somehow Karl can't do that, I think came to him as a bit of a surprise too. He was a bit shocked by it, and you can see it in this interview. But what we learned from Piers Morgan is shutting people down like that doesn't end well. because Piers Morgan has actually grown to be, love him or hate him, I certainly hate him, but has turned out to be one of the biggest political show successes in the world.
Yes.
So
The thing with Piers Morgan is, I think the irony I just wanted to point out is that, especially because he's interviewing Carl, Piers Morgan hates Tommy Robinson.
hates him.
He hates him with a passion,
and he says it. It's so hard for him. He can't. Yeah,
it's just the whole irony of all of this, how all this came about. Carl interviews Tommy Robinson,
and the funny
Nine
thing is,
Network fires him, then Piers interviews Carl.
I know, and then he's like stuck there saying, like, he has to say how much he hates Tommy,
Yeah,
because everyone knows it, and that how much he's dying for Tommy to come on his show, and that's all for ratings. Piers, to go off track, is guided by eyeballs, and that's it. And good on him. God bless. That's what drives him. He has zero conviction, doesn't stand really for anything, and anyone that's followed, that has their finger on the pulse, would know that. So for those of you out there that are loving the new Piers Morgan because you're loving what he says today, I hate to break it to you, tomorrow you will probably dislike him. Yeah. But he's one of those things. He's like the Jerry Springer of political talk shows. Like it's become like so crazy. You can't.
I'm seeing in the comments, like, people are saying Piers definitely pushed COVID vaccines hard at the start. Same as obviously same as Carl Stefanovic.
What
so
do you mean
these guys do
on
change.
Almost every issue, Piers has been like. Remember during COVID, he was like going on he was like saying we should lock everyone up.
Yeah,
who were breaking the rules, and then the Black Lives Matter protests happened, and then he did a whole segment about how proud he is that his son is out there at the Black Lives Matter, and that the guy's insane. But like I said, he doesn't actually believe anything.
But what do you think about this new venture, potentially Kyle and Carl? I think it's
I like
shake it up.
I like it. You know what? I think we need that in Australia. Australia's been missing alternative voices that are willing to
big names that have mainstream appeal. That's the thing, right?
Sure.
These guys have mainstream appeal, whatever way you look at it.
I'll tell you something funny that nobody would know is that today Carl's team reached out to me because they want to speak to that farmer that we broke the story on yesterday.
Yeah,
2 days ago now. And so I imagine I'm connecting him, but I imagine he'll be on their show. So I do think it's good. I think the fact is that we've been doing this kind of work in this space for many years, and through that period, that's how I connected with Carl. Is criticizing him during COVID for some of his reporting. That's almost 6 years ago, and I actually found him to be quite funny how he dealt with that. So I think now, like when you look at the farmer story that you just had up on screen, the fact that until now, this kind of story has been us running and, getting good airtime, but it usually or often stopped there. And whether the campaign worked and helped the people out, often did, but it never went. The media tried their hardest and trying their hardest to avoid this story now.
Yeah. So
to see then after we break a story like that, we do the original hard yards to make it happen. But then to see somebody like Carl's show and Kyle, if it happens, to see them then pick up on that and go further with it is going to be great. It's only going to help
it's
what
good,
we
it's good for
do.
the country, for sure.
It's 100% good for the country because it is taking away that monopoly power that the establishment have, the legacy media have. I do hope that they stay measured and they don't. That's my only fear, because we have seen that in America time and time again. People that leave the mainstream, a lifetime of mainstream platform, and then get a bit unhinged as they follow as they chase the clicks. That's what I like to call it. They get audience captured. I hope that doesn't happen to Carl. I don't know him well enough to know whether it will or it won't. I do know him well enough to know that Carl cares about Carl. That could be a good thing. That could be a bad thing. Don't know. I am excited to see where this leads. I hope and pray that he stays on issue. And that doesn't mean don't talk to people, but I think don't go down the rabbit holes and get stuck down there because you're seeing some exciting support in your comments. You know?
Well, yeah, when you don't have the $2 million contract or whatever he's been on, $3 million contract he's used to being on with the Nine Network. Once you do go solo, and there is potential there to be audience captured.
Yep.
Because that becomes your source of income, and we see that time and time again. So that is the real test here, isn't it? And I agree everything you said. But yeah, look, I wish them luck. I hope this Carl and Kyle thing happens because it's hilarious, and it's the drama for mainstream Australian media, which will just lose their minds. I have one more story. I know we're short on time. We've got about 15 minutes more left. And this happened last week. And this also comes back to everything we've been talking about. And this is around the monoculture, multicultural debate that's happening here in Australia right now. Thanks in part really to Pauline Hanson at the Press Club that brought up this term monoculture. Many of us have discussed what that means over the last few years, who talk about the demographics of this country. But we saw an example of this last week when, again, we had the Ashura marches happening here in Australia, well, around the world, but in Australia specifically. I'll just pull up some of that footage, and I'll get you to give your thoughts on that as well. Let me just pull up the footage from that. Actually, I've got a link to a video. Let's have a look at Sydney. I'll put the music down. Actually, we might get tagged for the music. But you saw that march. Actually, I forgot about this clip. But he's actually doing the
Nazi salute.
Nazi salute as he's walking by. So look, this is a cultural march.
The funny thing is that guy could have been part of the NSN, or he was wearing the same clothes.
Exactly. This is a cultural march. It's been happening for, I think, 1,400 years for the Shia Muslims, and they've been doing it in various ways throughout that time. But we are seeing it more and more in the West as these demographics change, as the population dynamics change, and it's no longer just in suburbs or at a local mosque. People are now gathering in the major cities. And you're seeing these massive groups of the Shia Muslim population in the country or the state take part in this ritual. And it's causing a lot of distress among some people in the community who look at this and say, well, this is clearly an invasion. This is not a part of the Australian culture, for instance, from our context. And then you have people saying, well, this is a religious practice. This is people just doing a religious practice. It's misunderstood. What's your take on this again?
I think it is misunderstood. I think if people look at what the history behind it is and what the significance of it is, it would worry a lot more people a lot more. I find this one particularly interesting. I dropped a video yesterday that's triggering all the right people for not only the right people. There's a lot of people that don't realize what's happening when you scratch the surface a little, especially on the right, that so many people are willing to talk out against every other group, but for some reason they're scared when it comes to this lot. And I don't blame them. They're a scary lot. Look at them like that. That is a show of force. It is also designed on top of the religious cover for it, like many things within the Islamist communities. It is meant to bring the community together to celebrate whatever it is that they're celebrating, the martyrdom of whatever his name was, but on top of that, it is the nephew. But it's also supposed to, it's like a march of dominance, not only to their opposing Sunni Muslims, but also to the country that they're being hosted in now. But putting all that aside, I think that whatever words you want to use it to describe it, if this is your multiculturalism, I don't think any Aussies or most Aussies want that, want those images to be what you're used to seeing dominate, take over our streets. It feels like we're being conquered. It really makes a lot of those conspiracy theories seem very right. That we are being demographically replaced by people who clearly don't share our culture. And however you want to define being an Australian, whether it's culture or whether it's ethnicity or whatever, that ain't it. That is not it. Like people dressed in black, smacking their chest while marching the streets and waving Islamist flags. while throwing Hitler salutes, Roman salutes. Like, that's not Australian culture, no matter which way you cut it.
Well, this is a problem that the West has, because one of the things that you see when we discuss this Ashura topic, and it comes up every year. I may have noted this, that every year around this time of the year, we see these footage coming from all the Western cities, and everyone points it out online, and and it's just back to normal the next week.
Yes,
This is a very normal thing that it's become. But there is instances in Middle Eastern countries and parts of Africa and parts of Asia where this has actually been banned because of the tensions that you can have between the Shia and the Sunni, and the fact that there might be
and the significance behind it, and what
and the
it
significance
actually
behind it, of course. But what in the West, what do we say? Well, we have religious freedom. We tolerate people's differences, and I keep bringing this thing up, Avi, that one of the issues when we're discussing multiculturalism or monoculture and what it means to be Australian is around the fact that the West actually provides for this shield of freedom for people to express themselves, and that's one of the great defining traits about the West. Like, we'll say, well, we're different to the Middle East because we allow people to have their religious practices here. But the caveat to that is, what I believe is, well, sometimes we do restrict religious freedom. Like, we don't allow child marriages in Australia because, for multiple reasons. But just because some cultures think child marriage is okay, we don't allow it. So in the same way, the West really has to come to terms with itself around this whole freedom concept and say, well, to protect the actual prevailing freedoms that we all love, and to protect Western culture and identity, we might have to restrict some of these religious freedoms, right? You can't just have a free for all where you can dominate Western culture in this way.
I would go further. I would say I want less religious restrictions. I just want people to wake up to realize what mass migration does, especially if you have like an open borders policy, and especially if you're bringing and focusing on bringing people from the third world. What you're introducing here is a culture that cannot assimilate and will, at the end of the day, dominate if you don't stop it. This will become, you're saying it's become normal to see this every year at this time of the year, and that's true. It has become normal, but soon enough, if we continue down this path, this is going to be the everyday normal, every day of the week. Just like when you go to London, you feel like that's like half the places you go in London, that's what you feel like you're walking through. So I think this needs to be a wake-up call for people. And what I also find interesting, I know I was going back to the video that I put on yesterday that has triggered even some of my followers saying, oh, you're cutting parts that this Sam was saying. What's interesting is last year he did post a video about it, and he did know what it was. He explained what Ashura was. And then this year, suddenly, because there was...
Well, watch the video. Let's just watch the video.
Watch the video, and then let me give an explanation for those that are asking why. Spot the difference.
Who do these people think they are? Honestly, who do they think they are? Sitting there from their position of white privilege. You know what I'm also sick of? The fake right. You fucking scumbags are later, Pubia. Chinese and Indian immigration invasion happening right now. 20-something Indians, fuck off.
Now watch how this brave warrior confronts one particular group.
It's obviously involved with the Islamic culture, right? And I mean, before I start with all this, I'm not here to start some type of religious war or race war. I'm not here for that. And don't get offended for people that are Muslim that are watching this.
Like every schoolyard bully, suddenly not so tough when he thinks the actual threat that we should be discussing and confronting will probably fight back. Spot. So basically, you see the energy change, right? That's the point of this video. Like, some people in the comments go, "Oh, I love Sam. Why are you cutting up out of context?" The point was to show you how willingly people are able to call out what they call a threat, but don't actually feel is a threat. Sam does not feel like the Jews or the Labour Party or One Nation at times. I know today he's posted, or last night he posted a new video in support of One Nation, wondering why everyone is condemning him as a Zionist and them as Zionists when he posted about it, even though as soon as, Gina Reinhardt makes a speech, he's like, throws his hands up in the air and condemns One Nation, and has done so time and time again. But so easily willing to condemn in the strongest terms everybody that he's unafraid to condemn even the Jews, where they like to, give some imply that their life is on the line for daring to join the chorus of hate against Jews. But then when it comes to calling out something that is clearly taking over Australia in the truest form, in the most obvious, in front of our eyes way, he suddenly comes with this disclaimer, oh no, so I don't want to upset you. And that is fear. He is scared. And I understand that.
Yeah.
But be honest about it.
Him
Be
and
honest
also
with-
Big Chalky's going through that as well. You saw the change. You saw the
The-
fear.
and people that's asking if there is a change, just go watch his video last year about Ashura. He was a lot more direct and condemning it. And unlike in this one where he started with, I don't really know what this is. I don't know what it is. I think it's some Islamic. Last year, he explained exactly what it is. He knew exactly what it is.
Well, these guys with their whole conspiratorial angst against the Jews, they attracted a lot of Islamic Muslim Australian followers, and who were just loving it and eating it up. And then what happens is once you get audience captured and you find out that a lot of your following are just rabid Jew haters, but they also end up being Muslim Australians. And do you want to upset the base that you have following you? That's the thing, right?
I think that's one hand.
That's
and
one
on the other hand,
aspect of it.
and on the other hand, because I know, and we've been in this space for a long time, is the only group people mock Indians all the time. Look at the White Australia lobby. They keep posting, they keep calling them Jeets and posting photos of like Indians taking craps on the streets and completely like painting the entire how many Indians are there? 2 billion Indians as this subhuman group. In fact, I think they've used that word before. But they won't do the same. At least Sam won't do the same about Muslims now, not because he's just audience captured by them, but because, when you say anything about that group, you're inundated with threats.
Yeah,
and they get.
When I see the Indian, the hate and the memes and stuff, I just laugh it off. I'm just like, all right, cool, whatever. I move on with my life. But it's not the same with.
Be honest. Do you go take a dump on the street?
I have never done such a thing. But I laugh it off, right? But the thing with the Islamists is, you end up with Charlie Hebdo. You end up with people who will, come after you and do things. I remember just after October, the attacks by Hamas, people that I knew, Muslim Australians that I knew, because we were talking about this very early on, and I had a large following as well of these people. They messaged me privately, and they were warning me, like saying, "We're your friend. We know you. Be careful with what you say next, because the consequences can be dire for you." And they were talking about, there's people that are willing to put out a hit out on you and Avi. Like, these are people that I know. So this is kind of what you come up against with these Islamic Muslim gangs and groups here in Australia when you talk about issues related to that. This actually happens. There is a thing that this actually goes on with. It is actually way more real than anything to do with the local branch of the Jewish lobby here in Victoria or in a different state. It's very real, and they're willing to act on it. And this, you confronted this out in the real world. I have as well. These people are out there, and they will come into your face and into your space to try to intimidate you.
I want to be clear for people. I don't blame Sam for being scared. I'm scared of him. That's why, and that's what bravery is overcoming your fear and still calling it out. Not calling out some boogie monster that you can pretend is scary so that you can be perceived and you can make yourself out to be brave, is to actually overcome that fear and talk about it, or at least be honest with your audience about it.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna end on this because I've got to go, but for a guy that likes to call everyone pussies and demanded that some Labor thingo debate him, I've been calling, and those of you in the comments saying, go have a chat with him any day. I will debate Sam on where Sam gets some things right, because a big chunk of his audience are conservative, good-hearted conservatives who don't realize what's happening here. So I do agree with a bunch of what Sam says, but it's what he's doing with the 25% of his content and growing because he's been audience captured or out of pure cowardice that I have a problem with. So instead of coming at me in the comments and crying about the fact that I dare call him out for it, tell him to man up. Tell him to come and have that conversation. Let's have that debate. Because he was very quick to call that Labor minister a pussy for not doing it. The only pussy here is Sam. And yes, he served in the ADF and we give him respect for his
Of course,
service.
100%.
We're going to give him respect for his service.
He does really well, man. Like he does really good in terms of reaching him, Chalky, and some of the other guys.
But there's people in the comments who also say, but he's an ADF soldier. How dare you come out? There are some, what's his name? Based on that logic, what's his name? The head of the NSN. He was also an ADF soldier. What's his name?
Tom Sewell.
Tom Sewell was an ADF soldier. I have zero respect for him.
Yeah.
It doesn't take away his service. It doesn't take away Sam's service. I think Sam's service is also a bit of like, he did 1 6-month tour in Afghanistan. Chill out, guys. I did more combat thing than Sam has ever done. And respect for him for doing it, but let's take it into perspective here. And it doesn't mean somebody avoids criticism on shit they do wrong.
It shouldn't be a shield because there's plenty of Democrats who have destroyed America, for instance, who have served in the military in the US in different capacities. So no, of course, it's something to respect, but it doesn't shield you from the criticism when you're dealing with politics, because politics touches everyone. It doesn't matter what type of service that you do, whether you're, someone working in the police, ambulance service, or someone at a business serving the community. There's a degree of entitlement that you have to discuss what happens in your country. And I don't think it differs in different stages based on what you've done. But of course, respect should be given. I noticed that we are coming to the end of
I've got to
today.
run.
I've got to run. I do have 2 super chats. I'll do that, Avi. If you need to.
What are the there's only 2 of them?
There's only 2 of them, yeah. We'll bring them up quickly. We've got one quickly here from the easy ones from John Palmer. Thank you for supporting.
Thank you, John.
Thank you for supporting the morning show, the most diverse morning show on Australian, airways.
No, we need to get more diversity. We need a DEI white person hire.
This guy get clipped out of context. And cancel thoughts. We've got here, keep up the fight, boys. Thank you for the support, guys. Thank you for joining in, everyone, for the morning show, the first one that we've done. We'll be back next week, right?
Yep, absolutely, guys. Before you go
in the comments, I'll read the comments later, guys. Let us know if you want us to do it at 8 o'clock or 10 o'clock. So 8 a.m. in the morning or 10 a.m.
And before you go, make sure to smash that like button. Make sure to share it and spread the news. One Nation all the way. Looking forward to November. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.